Welcome to the College Football Prop Show presented by LineStar. I'm Shannon Sommerville with your top 4 college football player prop bets for Week 8. We've got a great slate of games, including Texas going up against Georgia. Should be a great one. And you know I got a pick for you from that game, so that it will be included in the top 4 for this week. I'm using the LineStar Props AI tool to help me find the best value in the prop market. If you haven't checked it out, make sure to do so, linestarapp.com. And there is a way to get a free trial on LineStar app if you are curious about maybe just testing it out. What you have to do is, if you are a first-time user for Underdog, Sleeper, Chalkboard, or Parlay Play, use the promo code LineStar. You'll get a deposit match, plus you'll also get 1 free month of the LineStar app. So make sure you take advantage of that deal. The links to those apps are below, so take advantage while you can. And if you can do me a huge favor, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below. A comment enters you into the Prop Bets contest. If we go 4 for 4, one randomly selected commenter will win $100. Now, last week was an absolute dumpster fire of my picks, so I apologize to anyone, and I owe you guys a drink because last week was brutal. And looking back on my picks, I definitely think I made a mistake with Haynes King over 241.5 passing yards. And I even am kicking myself because LineStar's projection there, I went against it. They were saying to go over on the rushing yards. Of course, he had 107 rushing yards in that game. So he definitely crushed the over there. So we just should have gone with the rush yards instead of the pass yards. Lenora Sellers, close here, 27.5 rushing yards. He had 19, but that also... a lot of yardage got taken away because he was sacked 4 times in that game, which was a risk going into that. So maybe not a great read on that one. Quinton Judkins, I thought it was a good read, over 73.5 rush and receiving yards. And I thought he was going to get there, especially because he had over 40 in the first half. And he was kind of dominating on the ground there for Ohio State against Oregon. What a great game that was. But Hank Bachmeier, next up, over 208.5 passing yards. He was replaced midway through the third quarter in that kind of blowout game. Clemson won 49-14. So we got a little bit unlucky with that pick. So this week, though, I think I've got some pretty good games, and I did a little extra research because I'm trying to pick some winners for you guys. As always, comment your winners if you've got any locks for college football. As you guys know, I think college football is one of the harder sports to predict in terms of prop totals and college football in general. That's why it's so fun, though. So let's have some fun this week in Week 8. And we're going to start off with one of the higher game totals of the week here. We're talking about the Miami Hurricanes going to Louisville to take on the Cardinals in an ACC showdown. The game total is at 60. And when I looked at some of the sports books and what their predictions were for Miami's point total in this one, it's all the way at 46 points. So I'm leaning into some Miami Hurricanes players. That offense has looked pretty spectacular, one of the best in the country. So we're going to go to Miami's leading wide receiver, Xavier Restrepo, over 86.5 receiving yards. I do realize that's kind of a large number, so it might be a little tough to stomach for you. I'll have a backup if you guys don't like that one. But last year, he did set a single season record for receptions, so they love going to him. He's Cam Ward's favorite target this year, leading the team with 585 receiving yards. And he's a slot receiver on the nation's top scoring offense. I think he's in a great position, averaging 97.5 receiving yards per game, going up against Louisville, who has allowed an opposing receiver to exceed 80 receiving yards in 3 of the last 4 games. Louisville ranks 90th in opponent passing yards allowed nationally. Most recently, they allowed UVA's Malachi Fields 129. SMU RJ Maryland had 83. Georgia Tech's Malik Rutherford had 113 receiving yards. And like I mentioned, this is a very high game total. You'll have a fast-paced offense. Miami's 25th in the country in plays per game. And Ward has the second most passing yards in the country, 17 big-time throws, tied for third most. He's the number 1 projected player on LineStar for college football DFS, so we've got to go to his top receiver here. I feel confident going with Restrepo. He's a playmaking threat every part of the field. He runs great routes, great hands. All-out effort, too, is what his coaches praise him for. Now, if you are a little bit scared away of this total, think it's maybe a little bit too high, you could go to the wide receiver 2 for the Miami Hurricanes, Isaiah Horton, over 43.5 receiving yards. But either way, I like the play here given the high pace of game, the high game total, and what we're expecting from this Miami offense going up against Louisville. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to pair that with Cam Ward over on his passing yards. So Ward's projection on LineStar is 353. As I mentioned, he is the top projected college football player on the main slate for DFS in college football. The consensus projection is also to the over 336. And he's been averaging 370 passing yards per game this season, going up against a Louisville pass defense that's kind of mediocre. They're tied for 6 out of 17 teams in the ACC right now. You know who is tied with them, though? Cal. They are also 6th in pass defense, and that is a team that Ward just threw for 437 passing yards against. So I'm not too terribly scared of Louisville's pass defense, especially given the pace of play that Miami plays with, and Cam Ward is an absolute gunslinger. And now we just recently learned that star offensive lineman for the Miami Hurricanes, Jalen Rivers, is set to be back from injury, which is huge when you consider the pass protection that he'll get. So already elevating one of the top passing teams in the country to just another level for Cam Ward. Transfer center Zach Carpenter said this week in practice, the point of emphasis for the O-line has been to make the first strike, to hit with more violence. So I think this could be a really good game that'll be, won in the trenches. And I think especially given the fact that Jalen Rivers is back, I definitely am leaning heavily on Miami in this one. This game does have shootout potential, especially given the fact that it's on the road. However, my money's on the country's passing yards leader to clear the over here, something he's done in 5 of 6 games. Yeah, we're going Ward. We're doing a little stack here on Underdog Fantasy. All right, next up, we are going to Mizzou and wide receiver Theo Wease. Over 50.5 receiving yards. I like this here because LineStar's projection is 10 yards higher at 60, so is the consensus. He's averaging 68 receiving yards per game, so I'm comfortable taking the over with this number where it is at 50.5. He's been over in 4 of 6 games. And going up against an Auburn defense that ranks 10th in the SEC in total defense, 8th in pass defense efficiency. I actually saw them firsthand when they went up against Georgia, and you can tell really Georgia's offense actually left a lot out in the field there, and they could have gotten a lot more. There was a lot of receivers that were wide open, so I definitely think that this Mizzou team can take advantage of it. And when you look at Wease, he's averaging 13.1 yards per catch, so basically he needs 4 catches to get there, and that's a good thing because he's averaging about 5 receptions per game. And so I think what we could see from this Tigers offense is Brady Cook hitting him for a shallow cross and taking off a few times against this defense. He's a very savvy route runner, deep threat ability, and the combo of him and Luther Burden, I think, will be very tough for this Auburn defense to contain, especially since I just kind of feel like this Auburn team is kind of slowly unraveling under Hugh Freeze. They just haven't looked that tough. So I kind of like the spot here for Theo Wease to clear the over on 50.5 receiving yards, especially given the fact that the game total is 50 in this one. So we're looking at another high game total game here where it'll probably be a little bit faster of a pace there, and going with the Mizzou offense. Lastly, we're going to the Texas-Georgia game, the game of the week for sure. And as a Georgia fan, it does pain me to have to fade the Dogs a little bit, especially when it comes to the Georgia defense, which, quite frankly, looks a little soft. So I'm going with the Texas Longhorns wide receiver Isaiah Bond over 49.5 receiving yards. LineStar's projection is 63.3. The consensus is at 55. And this is one that he's been over in 5 of 6 games. He only had 1 reception for 5 yards last game versus Oklahoma, but that was because he suffered an ankle injury and left the game. So he probably would have gotten there had he been healthy. He is listed now on the injury report as probable in this one. I think he's good to go. And against a Georgia defense that isn't what it once was. They rank 7th in the SEC in total defense, 10th in pass defense efficiency. We're looking at a game total that is 57.5. And I saw some odds makers predicting Texas to put up 48 points in this one. That means that they're going to have to air it out and find their wide receiver, Isaiah Bond, in this one. I definitely think he could clear, even against a Georgia defense that's traditionally been good, but I feel like this year they're just not what they once were, a little bit soft, and the Longhorns receiving yards leader could have a big day against the Dogs. So those are my top 4 picks. Just to recap, we are rolling with doing a little stack of Miami here. Xavier Restrepo over 86.5 receiving yards. You could also go Isaiah Horton over 43.5 receiving yards if you like that one better. And then we're pairing that with Cam Ward over in his passing yards, plus Theo Wease, Isaiah Bond, putting it on a flex ticket on Underdog Fantasy and hoping for the best in week 8. Hopefully we have a better week than last week. last week was terrible, but we'll get it back. So hopefully this week is a better week for our bankroll. And next week we go 4-0. We fire off the money gun and all is right. Hey, we're still up thanks to a nice 4-0 week that I had the other week. You know, it all balances out in the end. Hopefully we'll end up on top by the end of this season. But let me know if you have any really good picks this week. I know it's kind of a tough week for picking props. We do have some really close games. I think it's going to be a great week either way, but looking forward to all of the action, including Texas hosting Georgia. Should be a good one because I feel like Texas, when I looked through their schedule and looking at some of their past games, like I feel like they haven't been as battle tested as Georgia has. I mean, Georgia from the beginning, taking on Clemson, taking on Alabama at Alabama, they've been in those environments, so they're a little bit, that's where I think that Georgia might have an edge. But as far as the composition of the team, I feel like Texas looks just so good from top to bottom. So if you're betting on sides, man, it's tough to bet against the Texas Longhorns right now, although I've seen it shift. I think 4.5 point underdogs. The dogs are the underdogs this week. Crazy position, not one that they find themselves in too often, but should be a good game. Good luck in all of your prop betting this week. As always, check out that LineStar Props AI tool. That's the tool that helps me in the prop market. So hopefully it gets me back on track this week. Last week I veered away. I think that was my mistake, was going too far astray from LineStar's projections, and learned my lesson. So we're back on track this week using the LineStar app Props AI tool. So make sure to check that out at linestarapp.com. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. Good luck. We'll see you guys next week.